Hello, this is Let's Get Criminal on Relaks Radio. Coming up over the next hour, we'll be asking a youth worker why kids end up behind bars and what we can do to stop it. We'll also be chatting to a senior reporter who works out of the most famous court in the world, the Old Bailey, on Britain's biggest court cases. He will tell us about the important cases we missed this year and what to pay attention to in 2021. Stay tuned.
More music online on the iOS and Android. On your mobile phones. Great speakers conversation around the globe. This is Relaks.
And mentor. He's currently coordinating a project that works with the most at risk and exposed to crime and violence. We also have the editor of Court News UK, Cameron Charters, coming in to fill us in on the most important cases of 2020, the ones you read about, the ones you may have missed, and what to pay attention to in the new year. Cameron also features regularly on the Trial by Media podcast, which I host. He knows more than anyone about what's going on behind the many halls of justice. But first, the news. 3/4 of England will find themselves in Tier 4 from tomorrow. The new measures will see an additional 20 million people placed under the highest restriction. In London, most primary and all secondary schools will remain closed until mid-January. The move comes as the UK deals with the second and more infectious strain of the disease, and after it announced nearly 1,000 deaths in one day, which is the highest since April. The second vaccine is being rolled out. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine will join the Pfizer one and paves the way for millions more people to be immunised in the new year. Boris Johnson's Brexit deal was voted through Parliament with a huge majority of 521 to 73. Britain is now set to exit from the European Union the day after tomorrow, New Year's Day 2021. A 27-year-old man has been charged with murdering a woman in Stockwell last Sunday. 26-year-old Azaria Williams died on Clapham Road. Mark Alexander from Lambeth will appear at the Old Bailey tomorrow. The Met Office has warned snow may bring a wintry end to 2020 for many, but they tell us in London to expect ice on New Year's Eve. And Argentina has legalized abortion in a landmark moment for women's rights in South America. That was the news, and coming up after the break, we'll be speaking to youth worker Richard Roach.
Relaks Radio.
Hello and welcome back to Let's Get Criminal on Relaks Radio, a show where crime journalists such as myself, legal experts, and everyone with a toe in the criminal waters debate how trials are tried, both by the courts and by the media. The time is 10 minutes past 8. I'm Charlie Jones, and for the rest of the show, I'll be speaking to Cameron Charters, who edits the Court News UK website. He works in the Old Bailey and knows more about the courts and justice system than pretty much anyone I've ever met. But first, I am really excited to introduce Richard Roach, who is a youth worker and mentor. He's currently coordinating a project that works with the most at risk and exposed to crime and violence. Now, I've been to a lot of cases in youth courts, and I spend a lot of time chatting to people who spend their life in courts, but I never really get to hear about what it's like for people just before or just after they appear in the dock. So it's a real treat to be able to hear from Richard firsthand about this side of things. So, hello, Richard, are you there?
Good evening, Charlie. I'm excited to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course, really nice to have you on. So, how are you? And tell us a bit about the work you do and the project that you're working on right now.
I'm good, thank you very much. Been a crazy year, but looking forward to next year. But yeah, all good. Looking forward to and celebrating with the family. Sorry, so you are. What else did you ask?
Just about what's the sort of general work that you do, and then
Right.
go on to the particular project that you're coordinating at the moment.
Yeah, so generally I'm into youth work and mentoring. Been doing that for about the past 4 or 5 years now. Um, at the current organisation that I'm working at the moment, which is a charity, I started coordinating a program last February because we realised that we've got loads of people coming through our doors, but the most at risk or the guys most involved in crime and violence not really coming through. So we started doing loads of outreach and started putting together a program to try and figure out what we could do to get them involved in what we're doing inside the building. You know, education, looking for jobs, creating opportunities, entrepreneurship, boxing. Because we're a boxing academy, but we have education, employment coordinators, helping people, you know, build CVs, get work, look for employment, apprenticeships, or any sort of progression. There's so many things going on down there. And we realise there's many groups within the community that are not accessing it. So we went out there and we spoke to them and we tried to figure out why, and we did start to understand why. And we thought, let's design a program that would actually that can actually work with that group and tailor to their needs. So we went back to the academy and started designing it. Couldn't get any funding for it, so we just started using the reserve pot. And this is our second pilot program now, working with 10 young men who are entrenched in gang violence.
Wow. And what sort of methods do you find the most effective in helping them come out of that cycle?
Okay, so that's a difficult one. I think mentoring, having mentors and powerful role models that have kind of been there and done it, or even haven't been there and done it, just people that are actually passionate about the progress and development of young people. If you get some adults that can work with young people over a long period of time, mentor them, help them reshape their lives, help them understand more about life through personal development, through education, discussion, and debate. Trips, you know, showing young people a different environment, taking them away from where they are, giving them some breathing space and time to connect with different types of people, older people. These are the type of things that we've found will start to help young people make a transition onto something better. But it's very difficult. It's so much more than just trips and mentoring and role models and education. It's a lot of time and a lot of care and funds. You know, we need a community. You know, so many different types of things we would need. But yeah, we are making some progress on our provision, and we know others that are making progress on theirs. But it is very difficult. It's a massive challenge.
Wow, I mean that is brilliant work. Have you got a sense from the work that you've done about why kids get involved into crime or into gangs?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, just looking at it, looking around at London at the moment, I would say there's so many different factors of why young people are getting involved, but poverty being a big one. I mean, most young people get involved in maybe, you know, crime or because of poverty, really. They need some money. I think violence is linked to the whole money aspect. When you've got territory, young people can't sell on other people's patches or in other people's areas. There are loads of different complications that come with the drug game. And I mean, if you look around London, London is flooded with drugs, and these young people ain't bringing it in. So these young people are just almost part of a big operation, which they're just a small fish. And I say poverty, and I say grooming, because it's quite generational now. It's been happening for a very, very long time. So each generation will groom the next generation underneath them and bring them into the way of life, because there's not that many options job-wise. We have all kinds of issues with the whole job market and employment issues. So there's a range of issues, you know, the education system, lack of jobs,
and
not enough positive role models. Sorry, yeah.
And the gangs, do they sort of provide a sense of security then, a sense of that it's all going to be okay if you join our team?
Well, yes and no. You know, some people, not necessarily it's going to be okay, but you can definitely earn some money, and that means things will be okay. That will definitely improve your situation, improve your family situation. If funds are low at home and there's just maybe most of the time a mum at home, a lot of the time people do have both parents, but we've seen a lot of single parent families because relationships is breaking down all over the country. So especially in the areas that we're working in, it's very difficult for people to maintain a healthy relationship when there's poverty and there's crime and there's all different issues facing people with addiction. So yeah, young people end up getting involved, feeling a little bit secure because some money coming in, and feeling a bit powerful because the strength in numbers. Because being a part of a group or a gang would mean like you're a part of a family almost. People that look out for you, people that will potentially look out for you. All different groups of people operate differently, but there is a lot of love out there because people are struggling together. They're all in the same boat kind of thing. So you might as well just row together.
Absolutely.
So
And
yeah,
if for somebody who hasn't really got a sense of the state of the gangs in London, how much of the crime do you see is down to gang related activities? How big is the problem that London's facing?
well, that's the thing. It's a very difficult question to answer because I don't know how we would define a gang. For me, a gang is a group of people that have something in common. They might all need to survive. They might all, a gang is an organized group of people that are just trying to, make money and stuff like that, protect themselves, protect their area, so, like violence, having like a little squad of people that,
And most
I think
patches that you come across of London, is there a gang that operates in a certain patch? Is that pretty much throughout London that each area is ascribed to a specific gang, or are there large parts without?
that's the thing. It's like you've got individuals and groups of people, whether they're black, white, or Asian, up and down the country, making money from drugs. If you want to call that a gang, then yeah, you can call it a gang. But some people wouldn't say that they're a gang. Some people are a group of people. Some people are a family, like actually a family, like brothers and cousins. We're talking Indians, white, black. This is happening. And then you've got, groups of different people from different households coming together, which you could call a gang because it's quite organized. And yep, they're making money to survive and to better themselves in that way. So when you say is it gang that's committing a lot of violence, I say yeah. It's within those groups, a lot of violence will be happening because there's so many different issues that come with working on the street and territory and young kids. A lot of robberies happening and a lot of violations and disrespect and all sorts. So yeah, you could say yeah, gangs are committing loads of different violent acts as well.
And what is the effect of going to court or to prison on these kids who might end up in these gangs? Are they scared about the prospect of ending up in court, or is it sort of almost something to be proud of for some people?
It's a bit of both. It depends on who you come across. For some young people, they've never. Everything becomes real once you get arrested. Because before you get arrested, you're just a young kid on your block taking orders. You were growing up from a toddler taking orders from your parents, and then you grew a bit older. You may have become a bit unruly, or you may have be distracted, and you're not really listening to your parents anymore. But you've basically got new parents who you're taking orders and listening to. So you're just kind of doing what you're doing until you get arrested and start getting in trouble with the police, and then that's when it becomes a bit more real for some people. They start to realise that this was actually an offence and it was against the law. They didn't consider the law before. They haven't never seen the law, understood the law, nothing like that. They're just living in their environment, doing what they need to do to survive. And so for a lot of young people, it really shakes them up, gets them scared. They realise that they're doing something quite wrong. They see the way the CPS and the judges look at them, and they feel like, wow, nobody's ever looked at me like this before. This is the first time I've been looked at in this way, like I'm a real baddie. And I'm just a young kid. I don't know anything. I'm just going down the road giving people a bag of weed or a bag of something else, and I get paid. And I've never had money before, so I'm just doing what I'm doing. So, yeah, and for some people, yeah, it's a badge of honor. You come back to the area, or if you've been away and you've been away and you've done some prison time, definitely you get some respect. You're more of a hard man. That's if you held it up and there's no stories on you, and you held that prison sentence. But yeah, if you come out and there's no stories, you'd be highly respected, man, in some areas, and you'd become even bigger and
Yeah. So it sounds
more notorious.
so it sounds like court either takes you one of two ways. It either scares you straight, or it makes you think, well, this is the path that I'm on, and this is the respect that it can get me. So,
Respect and what comes with it as well. Like a lot of people, maybe not so much young people, but as you get a bit older, you realize it comes with it. So when you get caught, it comes with it. You do some time, you come back out, you can change your life, or you can get back in because it's all you know. And it is what it is. Everybody sees it differently. But for young people, yeah, it definitely scares a lot of them. But
mm,
for some of them, they're desensitized. They don't understand anything else. And prison, all of their friends are there anyway, so they might be like, well, just put me there and let me see how I get on. Everybody's there anyway.
right. And is there anything specifically a court does, say prison, or say what used to be ASBOs, now youth referral orders, or probation? Is there any sort of particular aspect that is really helpful that you found, or really unhelpful?
Um, I think when young people's stories are understood by the judges or whoever else works in the court, and they're given a chance and they're able to get um, probation or a referral order instead of going to prison, that is helpful for a lot of young people. Yeah, it gives them a chance. If there's some good probation officers and mentors within the yacht or the youth offending team, they can actually transform that young person and get that young person on the straight and narrow. So sometimes it's really, really good that that young person is not thrown in prison, coming out with a criminal record, going to find things really difficult and end up going back to the same thing. It's good when they're given another chance and given a mentor. Probation officer can be a mentor to help them now and support them and figure out where they're going wrong and what help needs to happen for them to maneuver and progress in the crazy areas that they're living in.
That's really
You know,
encouraging to hear, because I see judges sort of hand cases off to probation sort of almost willy-nilly, and I sort of worry that it's just the standard track of what to follow rather than any. So it's really encouraging to hear that that gets followed up on and makes a real positive difference. But there's been quite a lot of cuts to probation in the recent years. Now you've been doing your work for how many years was it? Sorry.
I've been youth working for 5 years, but running programs for 2 years.
And have you seen any change in that time? Any sort of, has it gotten worse, or is it getting better, or is
If
it
I'm
sort of
honest, I don't even want to talk about the 5 years. Let's talk about the last 20 years. I'm 35 now.
mm,
So let's talk about the last 20 years when I think I said to you the other day, the times of Daminola Taylor, when Daminola Taylor was stabbed and killed.
yeah,
That's youth violence. Today, we have the same thing happening. Just 2 Fridays ago, one of our young people that come to our academy was stabbed in the chest and killed 2 Friday evenings ago at 7 p.m. in our local area where we work and his local area where he lives. He was 15. I watched him grow up from when he was about 9, since I started working at that academy. When I first met him, he was up to my hip. I saw him a month ago. He's now up. He's leveling with me. He's 6'1". Well, he was 6'1", and he was stabbed in the chest and killed 2 Fridays ago. I went to a balloon release for him last Friday. We all released balloons, and the community came out to say goodbye. So no, I don't actually see the change. I would love to say I could see some changes. I would love to say that. Well, no. Let me rephrase that. All the work that we're doing around the borough, yes, there are changes. A lot of young people are able to progress and get out and do better as a result of certain academies, youth workers, mentors, community groups, and all sorts. But it's a huge problem. And unless the government and so many members of the community step up, I believe we're still going to see things like I saw last Friday with losing our 15-year-old young person. And we'll continue to be having this problem within the UK in 10 years, 20 years, saying, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? People still saying we don't understand the problem.
I mean, that is so heartbreaking to hear.
Hmm.
And if you were prime minister for a day, what would be the number one thing that you would try and do in terms of policy, in terms of giving more money, or anything that you think would slow the tide the most of this violence?
Well, everybody talks about young people and they're our future, and we must invest in the young. And I've heard Boris Johnson and Sadiq Khan and so many people talk about our young people, but how much do government really, really care about our young people when so many of them are being killed? We have, like I said earlier, so much drugs within the community, and that seems to be the only way that people can really make money, man. So we need to have a lot more job options that are clearly available to young people, and really start employing young people as well. Like start bringing young people through. Education system needs to start making some changes. We need to start teaching young people things that they're really going to need in life, because they're not really understanding life. They're leaving school really unaware and uneducated. And the English and maths and science is not enough to take them through this life. We need more life skills. We need more mentors in schools. We need more money in schools. We need teachers to be. We need a new curriculum almost. We need to stop just expelling young people. We need to start working with young people a lot more and understanding their situations. We need to stop putting people in naughty schools and sending them off to prison so early. We need more youth provisions opened up and more community engagement.
Oh, brilliant. And just out of interest, why did you get into doing the work that you do?
Because I'm one of the young people that we're talking about, and I've suffered, and I've watched other people suffer, and I said I might as well use my life to try and help as many young people, try and improve the situation in the areas and the community. Just do what I can. And then I got involved, and one thing led to another. You start just having little chats and conversations, doing registers and just a little bit of youth work, and interacting with young people. But then you just get deeper and deeper involved and see that the situation is deeper than you could have ever imagined. And really, can you really help? But yeah, I feel like we're just trying and we're doing our best, putting a plaster on a huge gashing wound. But the more people that get on board and start supporting and get involved, and the more money, I think that we will see the change that we're looking for.
Brilliant. Well, then did you have a mentor who helped you navigate that world?
Not an official mentor. I would say there was older members of the community who did music and did other positive things that I would see and use as inspiration. And they would, there were some people. Because I do music basically, and I grew up in doing music, and I would say music is what saved me and got me to a better space. And I have to thank the people that were doing music before me and brought me into that to that world. So I would say they're my mentors, even though they didn't know it. I was learning from them. I was learning how to survive. I was learning how to write music. I was learning a new way. And that's my mentors, older musicians in the area.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Richard, thank you so much for coming to chat with me today. Tell us a bit about the show that you do on Relaks.
I've only done one show on Relaks, actually. I haven't actually managed to get back down to Relaks. I should be getting down back there on the 4th, next Monday. But I had one show, and it was just an introductory show to introduce myself, talk a bit about my life, and my early beginnings down there in Bow and the Isle of Dogs. I spoke a bit about my music career, and I spoke a bit about youth violence and the fact that we've lost 2 young people this year. And although I'm very positive that we're doing great work and we've got a strong team, it's very disheartening. So that I was kind of just venting on that show and just putting it out there of how I'm feeling about such a crazy end to the year for me and my team personally, as we lost our young person.
Absolutely.
But just keeping up the fight, just knowing that we've had crazy times way before this. We're in a crazy time now, but we'll get there eventually.
Amen. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on. So that's
no problem.
And so Richard's show is going to be on Monday, January the 4th of 2021. So we're going to
Yeah.
take a quick break now, and we'll be back afterwards with Cameron Charters. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you, Charlie.
Relax online on the I.
Hello, and welcome back to Let's Get Criminal on Relaks Radio, a show where crime journalists such as myself, legal experts, and everyone with a toe in the criminal waters debate how trials are tried both by the courts and by the media. The time is 33 minutes past 8. I am Charlie Jones. I was just speaking to the youth worker Richard Roach, who spoke so movingly and eloquently about why kids get into crime and what can be done to stop them. Coming up, I'll be speaking with Cameron Charters, who edits the Court News UK website. Now, he works in the Old Bailey and knows more about the court and the justice system than, as I've said before, pretty much anyone I've ever met. He's also a commentator on the podcast Trial by Media, which I host. And I'm going to play you a snippet of a conversation we have in episode 3 about youth courts. Just a warning, we do talk in detail about cases involving serious sexual assaults and some of the worst types of violence. The clip is only a couple of minutes long, but the conversation with Cameron afterwards may touch on the issues again. So to set up the clip, we talk about when children should get anonymity, which is the right not to be named in press reports or TV coverage or anything about the court case, because the law states that everyone under 18 needs to be kept anonymous. But if you commit the crime under 18, let's say 16, but because of whatever reason you don't face trial until 18, which is quite common, then the law says that you can be named, even if you committed the crime as a child. So that's the discussion that is taking place here. Natural instinct would be to say that if you commit a crime under the age of 18, you should be kept anonymous, because I feel like if we as a society have decided to give these kids anonymity because we think, they committed the crime so young, they deserve a second shot at life once they've served their time without this crime, following them around for the rest of their life. So if that is the logic, shouldn't they be kept anonymous even if they are tried and convicted after they turn 18? Now, I know all three of you disagree with me on this. So, Carolina, firstly, why am I wrong?
Okay, in this case specifically, Bailey brandished a knife at the woman, tried to force her into recording herself saying, "I consent," so we could use it as evidence. Then on the same day of the attack, went off and robbed, slapped, and threatened to stab a 13-year-old boy. So this 17-year-old at the time was clearly cold, calculating, and committed a serious offence. Also, he was very close to the age of 18. And then, of course, afterwards, at the time of sentence, was an adult. So in this case, I'd say he doesn't deserve to have the right to be anonymous. Also, you could argue that, as I said, it's in the public interest for people to know who this person is and what he's capable of.
Sophia?
Yes, well, unsurprisingly, I agree with Carolina. This is not a 15-year-old who stole someone's iPhone. In cases where they're dangerous offenders, especially in sexual offenses, I think the right of the so-called child to keep their anonymity is outweighed by the right of women and girls and just people in the community to know that there is a dangerous predator amongst them when he comes out of prison eventually. I think with anonymity, for me, it's very much on a case-to-case basis. And one of the reasons to lift anonymity does include persistent offending and just generally the dangerousness of the defendant, basically.
Cameron?
Well, when a court is considering the question of anonymity, the judge has to conduct a balancing exercise, which is to weigh up the rights of the defendant to rehabilitation and their welfare concerns and the rights to the public to know what's happening in a court. And I think as the scale slides towards public interest, anonymity should be lifted. And what would weight that scale would be, as Sophia's pointed out, prolific offending, serious offending, and the seeming lack of deterrence previous sentences haven't had on the defendant.
And do you agree that I'm right in terms of the logic behind why we give these kids anonymity? Is it so that these crimes don't follow them around for life, or is it just because they don't think as a young person their mental health can deal with age, but then once they turn 18, even if they committed the crime a few years ago, then their mental health can deal with it, so their anonymity is lifted?
I think the point of age, that being 18, it is an arbitrary decision, and of course there might be somebody under 18 who's very mature and somebody over 18 who's not so mature. But the reason why anonymity is imposed on young offenders, generally speaking, is because if it can be shown to the judge that by lifting their anonymity, their rehabilitation will be harmed, then justice isn't served, because then they're more likely to reoffend. However, if it cannot be shown, nearly always by defence barristers, that anonymity has any beneficial effect on their clients, then of course that argument becomes redundant.
So that was me, Charlie Jones, Carolina Herantz-Carr, Sophia DeRue, and Cameron Charters on the Trial by Media podcast, which is the first 4 episodes of which are out now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. We are all crime journalists who work in and around London's courts. Coming up after the break, we'll be talking to the softly spoken Scouser you just heard on that podcast, Cameron Charters, and that'll just be right after this break.
Relaks Radio.
And so, welcome back to Let's Get Criminal, and hopefully we have Cameron Charters on the line. Hello, Cameron.
Hello, thank you for having me.
That's all right. Thank you. Welcome, Cameron. So Cameron is one of the best court reporters in the country and definitely one of the hardest workers. Cameron, you've seen life in all of these courts, but let's stick with youth, the youth theme for now, given the show. We've just had what happens to kids before and after they come into court, but inside a youth court is a whole different kettle of fish, even from adult courts. So start us off, please, by explaining what a youth court is and how is it different from a normal court?
Well, a youth court is there for defendants aged between 10 and 17. The offences it deals with are primarily theft, burglary, antisocial behaviour and drugs offences. For the more serious offences of rape and murder, youths charged with those matters do first appear at the youth court, but then moved on to the Crown Court for future hearings. The age of criminal responsibility is 10 in this country. That's why the starting point is 10, and the turning point is 18 when you're deemed to be an adult in the law. Hence, that 17 being the final year, you can appear in a youth court.
And what happens if you commit a crime if you're 9 years old?
Well, you can be placed on a curfew, which restricts your movement at certain times of the day. But generally speaking, as you are not deemed to be criminally responsible, you won't appear in court for the matter. But sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, the other authorities, such as social services, would obviously be taking an interest at that stage.
Of course. And if you do go to a youth offenders institution, which is sort of the prison for young kids, is that more for rehabilitation, or is it just sort of a prison for young people?
The emphasis is on rehabilitation and the prevention of future crime. I think it would be fair to say, although there is a punitive element in the sentencing, the percentage, if you like to think of it, is far heavier towards prevention of crime and rehabilitation than the punitive element.
And we've just been talking to Richard Roach, who's a youth worker, and he was talking about how easy it can be for kids from underprivileged backgrounds to end up in the dock. Do you find that it's mostly kids from underprivileged backgrounds, or is it a range of kids who end up there?
Overwhelmingly, it's children with connections to gang violence or gang drug dealing, and the vast majority of those teenagers are from underprivileged backgrounds. Yeah.
And we've actually had a conversation before on the podcast where I ask if you would be confident in the process should your kid brother or kid sister end up in a youth court in the dock, and you said you wouldn't be confident in the process, but I never got the chance to ask why, so I'm taking that chance now, Cameron. So why would you not be confident in the process, or is that still your point of view?
Well, it's still my point of view. I think when we were previously speaking, the reason I gave was along the lines of, as a news reporter, you should always be wary of any authoritarian system in order to keep us in check. But also taking another point, I think the issue that youth courts have, and perhaps even the Crown courts have, so they simply lack the gravitas to instill discipline in the young. I think the competing forces of friendship, frustration, poverty, and perhaps even gang membership hold a greater sway on the young. So the courts simply in very basic language cannot get through to the defendants. I think almost once they appear in the dock, the battle is almost lost.
Yeah, see, that was sort of my instinct as well. So it was really encouraging, because actually, as I was just speaking to Richard about this, and he was saying that it's sort of the doc either sort of makes you go one of two ways. It either makes you think, okay, it's a bit of a status symbol, and you can sort of let a bit on, in terms of status, or he said that actually he did found a fair amount of people were scared straight. So that sort of gave me a bit of encouragement in the system, because I think we just see it play out and sort of, time and time again without really seeing what happens afterwards.
Well, I have to concede that my experience is limited to the system not working, in that the majority of the defendants I have seen have appeared in the youth court and have then gone on to appear in the Crown Court. But I do readily admit I only see one side of it.
Yeah,
so,
you see the kids that always come back again and then come back as adults. Yeah, but not quite the ones that.
Yeah.
So it's nice to think that there is some aspects of it that work.
Mm.
Is there anything that about it specifically that you would try changing about either the court process or the punishments or anything to sort of to improve the process and make it less likely that these kids do end up reoffending?
Mm. Well, it's an interesting question. I suppose the only thing I could offer is to say perhaps the prevention of crime is more important than the punishment of crime. If there's a way to prevent young people from committing crime, then all resources and efforts should be directed towards that. There's only partial benefit in punishing somebody once a crime has been committed. I suppose a way in which the prevention of crime could be ensured is heavier policing, or at least policing in the sense that there are police officers walking around who are visible, which may add to a deterrence, but may also encourage people to talk about what's going on because they'll feel safer.
And just delving back into the podcast for a second. Now, there's a point in the podcast where we talk about the really tragic murder of Jodie Chesney, who was a 17-year-old former Girl Scout who was stabbed in a random attack. And we talk about why it was such a well-publicized case. You said the fact that she was a Girl Scout who had met Boris Johnson and was playing in the park, that really sort of got under the skin of Middle England in a way that most murders don't. And then I then ask if the amount of coverage was because she was white, and you say I think race was certainly an element in the coverage in that it was given more prominence than it may have been, because I suspect had a black teenager been stabbed in the park, it wouldn't have been seen as quite as newsworthy. But that's a sentiment that perhaps can't be backed up by facts. Now, I think you're bang on with this, so let's assume it is fact for a moment. What do you think needs to change to make us value the newsworthiness of victims equally? Is it about the makeup of the news editors themselves? Is it about trying to change the mindset of the people who buy the news? I know this is a huge sort of question, but
well, I'll try and say something intelligent about that. I'll do my best. What I think what you have to recognise to begin with is sadly some news stories aren't equal, even though there's been a personal tragedy. They simply don't carry the newsworthiness. Yet, were we to tackle this head on and to say there were two stories of equal news value, the only distinction feature being that one of them involved a white person, the other one involved a black person. You have to recognise that newspapers serve the interests of their readership, and newspapers are primarily a financial proposition. They need to convince their audience the information they are selling is worthy of the money they're asking. And their only way of measuring whether or not they're doing this is through how many copies they sell. However, as society changes, they must adapt, because if they don't, they'll cease publication. The core readership of bigger nationals and Sundays, I think, is around the 1 million mark each. And in order to maintain this and broaden it, newspapers would have to address contemporary issues, not only their core readership, but of the wider populace. The difficulty is not doing so too rapidly, thereby alienating your loyal readers on the basis of an uncertain new following. News editors would have to change slowly to scatter the seeds of a fresh market within their current model. So when an old reader picks up a copy of the paper, he believes the story designed for the new readership was something he was always concerned about in the first place. I think that the newspapers have got to recognise that this country is changing, but have got to be sympathetic to the current readership, which is primarily of an older generation.
And are you confident that we're going to get there?
I think it rather hangs in the balance for the print press. There may be, by the print press, I mean the daily press, and what might be seen as the conventional press. There may be greater scope in magazines, radio, television, online, but I very much hope that the print press will recognise the need to include a broad range of what are known as human issue stories.
And on to sort of, as it's the end of the year, we'll just change tack slightly. We had lots of important cases this year. We've had the inquest of Ellie Kissy-Debrah, which established air pollution as a cause of death for the first time in the UK. There was the trial of one of the most haunting mass deaths events in our country's history, with the 39 Vietnamese people who died in the back of a lorry. Then there were dozens of cases protesting lockdown restrictions. Then we've got the whole spate of celebrity trials, from Johnny Depp to the Wagatha Christie gate. What do you think was the most important trial or case this year?
There's a lot to pick from. I suppose I'd have to say the trial of the killers of PC Andrew Harper. I can elaborate on my reasons for that if you like, but that's my gut instinct. I think it actually ties in with what we were discussing earlier about defendants who have substantial criminal records at a young age, reoffending and then committing a very grave offence. The details of how PC Andrew Harper died are well known, but they were of the most violent nature imaginable. And of course, if you accept the verdicts of the jury, which a lot of people found very difficult to do, this was unintentional. It just goes to show how, if a defendant or multiple defendants pursue a criminal lifestyle, they can go on to the cause of a great tragedy, without meaning. If you accept, as I say, if you accept the jury's verdict without meaning to be so.
And do you think is this something that this Harper's Law was aimed at trying to prevent or trying to change in some way, or is it nothing really to do with it?
Actually, I think the motivation behind that was frustration at the verdict, and therefore the limitation of sentence which was imposed. I think that's probably the motive. It would be an interesting question. Had PC Harper's killers been convicted of murder, not manslaughter, would PC Harper's Law have been balloted for and brought before brought to the attention of the public? I don't know. It felt born of frustration and more so than anything.
Right. And sorry, just to clarify, that was his fiance's law that she put. She was advocating after the conviction. Onto something.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Onto something slightly. Well, what would you think was the, I don't know, maybe in a different vein, the funniest or the most memorable or the sort of wildest thing that happened in courts in 2020?
When I was personally present and sort of I can give an eyewitness account at the Old Bailey, a gang of very young men, and gangs used in the correct term. This was gang violence. 5 young men were jailed for a total of 116 years after a murder in Wood Green. And during the returning of verdicts, a family member for one of the defendants leapt down from the public gallery, which, if you have ever been to the Old Bailey, you'll know is actually above the well of the court, which is where the barristers and press and jury sit. And he leapt down some feet, perhaps 5 to 10 feet, into the well of the court, and approached a female police officer, I believe, and the prosecuting lawyer, and was very threatening, and I think used the expression, while I was there, he used the expression, "I will kill you," and I thought that was very shocking, because it really goes to the point that I was raising before, which is whether or not the Crown Court and the Youth Court still have the gravitas to maintain civil order, which I think this was an episode of them failing to have the necessary gravitas.
Wow, I couldn't even have imagined what that's like. I haven't seen anything close to that. Blimey, it sounds just like pandemonium.
Well, very much was.
Yeah. Just before I get to the last question, I can't not mention the biggest issue in the justice system at the moment, which is the backlog. There are currently 100,000 cases waiting to be heard in the Crown Court, 500,000 in the Magistrates' Court. People face years waiting for a trial, meaning it can be hanging over their head for years if they're innocent. Also, witnesses, if they're called years later, might forget key parts of an event that happened 4 years ago on a Tuesday in February. It's a hugely important issue. How confident are you that they will make a dent in the backlog next year? Or do you think it might get worse?
Well, I'm pessimistic in my outlook by nature, so I always think things will get worse. I think, though, things have got to improve, or it might well. This just shows us how pessimistic I am, or it might well be over for the criminal justice system in any sensible sense of the word, because the issues are that this is I suppose it depends how you view the function of of the justice system. But I've always felt that the court system was there to protect those who are innocent of the crimes they're accused of. That's why they're tried by their peers, and that is why one of the most well-known phrases about our criminal justice system is innocent until proven guilty. And of course, there are people now who are on remand for crimes which they haven't even been convicted of, facing years before trial. I just don't think it's sustainable. I think there will be major unrest, and of course, this unrest may be formed in the prisons, and it may also be formed among defence barristers who simply can't see their clients because of restrictions, and who are getting paid, and so there's nobody there to represent these people. I don't see how they can be tried. So it will become a very vicious cycle very quickly. So I hope that it will improve, but my instinct is that it won't.
Do you think we might just sort of scrap trial by jury to try and speed it up?
Alarmingly, it's been suggested that may happen. It was always being suggested for very complicated fraud matters. Fraud matters which could run for, and this isn't an exaggeration, 6 to 8 months. That the juries just weren't able to understand the evidence. So, but the precedent would be disastrous. So I hope not, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were matters at the Crown Court which were dealt with without a jury.
Or maybe
in the near future.
Priti Patel will just bring back the death penalty ASAP, as she's been quoted to have been trying to find out if that's a possibility. I don't know if you've seen those reports.
Well, I think that she wasn't unsympathetic to the notion of the death penalty. But I don't know. That is a difficult question. I mean, it really goes to whether or not you're in favour of the death penalty or not. My instinct is that I'm opposed to it. So I hope she doesn't.
Me too. And in a perhaps brighter or maybe not, we'll see. Note, what does 2021 look like in terms of what are the important and interesting cases that we should be keeping our eye on in the next 12 months?
Well, so in the first week of January, there's the decision as to whether or not Julian Assange will be extradited, which I know you're familiar with. Then there is also the sentencing of the case you highlighted before of those who've been found responsible for the deaths of 39 migrants from Vietnam who were brought over to Britain in a lorry and found dead in that lorry in Essex. And then there was also a rather peculiar hearing about Tahiri Sadala, who stabbed to death 3 men in a park in Reading. The hearings about his motives, whether or not he had a terrorist intention. So those 3 cases are all scheduled to be heard in the first week of January 2021 at the Old Bailey.
Wow, busy time for you, and yeah, for me, I'm covering the Julian Assange trial. That's what Cameron was alluding to there. Wow, so yeah, busy time. Thank you so much for coming on, Cameron. Really appreciate it.
No, pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So that was Cameron Charters, who's editor of the Court News UK website and commentator on the Trial by Media podcast, which I host. Thank you also to youth worker Richard Roach for our chat earlier in the show about what can be done to prevent kids ending up behind bars. You can listen to both interviews on the Relaks radio app. And you can also catch the Trial by Media podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SoundCloud. Our first episode covers celebrities, including, as we were just discussing, the Julian Assange extradition case against the USA, Johnny Depp's legal action against the Sun newspaper, the MP Charlie Elphicke, who is currently in prison for 3 counts of sexual assault, the former Blue Peter presenter John Leslie, who was cleared after a trial of sexual assault, Meghan Markle's lawsuit against the Mail Online. And episode 2 is called Sex Grinder Murder and explores the link between dating apps and murders and touches on the serial killer Stephen Port and his previously unknown links to other killers, including Gerald Matavo. It also looks at how Zahid Yunus, who was handed a life sentence in the summer, tried to get away with 2 horrific murders. The third episode, which you've heard some of this evening, is about youth courts, and the 4th focuses on financial heists, including the infamous Hatton Garden raid. The time is 4 minutes past 9. This has been Let's Get Criminal. I'm Charlie Jones. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time.
iOS and Android on your mobile phones. Great speakers conversation around the globe. This is Relaks Radio.